Tonight, we slip beneath the velvet veil of the Middle Ages, where beauty was a burden, mirrors were suspicious, and you probably weren't supposed to have eyebrows. You wake in a room barely touched by light, the kind of dawn that tiptoes in through warped glass and worn stone. A low fire crackles somewhere, but it's mostly ash now, heat in theory, not practice. Your straw mattress is lumpy. The wool blanket itches. And yes, your pillow is filled with what might generously be described as feathers, but mostly feels like disappointment. Outside, a cock crows with the misplaced confidence of someone who doesn't realize he's not getting paid. You sit up slowly, as if your body is made of medieval wood and creaks accordingly. Your tunic, dyed a shade that once aspired to be blue, sticks to your skin slightly. Not from sweat, but because laundry day was 3 weeks ago, and even then soap was mostly lie and regret. Welcome to the Middle Ages. You probably won't make it through this day, but that's fine. You're not here to work. You're here to drift gently and curiously through a world where beauty standards were so complicated they would have baffled a modern-day fashion magazine and maybe caused it to burst into flames. Before we begin, take a moment to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the slow unraveling of odd history and sleepy sarcasm. It helps us keep the candle burning on these dreamy rabbit holes. And if you're feeling cozy, tell us where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Maybe someone's drifting off in Oslo. Maybe someone's folding laundry in Ohio at 2:17 a.m. Either way, we're all connected by curiosity and a shared craving for gentle storytelling. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You open a creaky door. It moans like a bard after 3 Alish. The courtyard outside is quiet, except for the soft shuffle of straw underfoot. Pigeons roost in the eaves of a nearby chapel, puffed up like self-important bishops. In the center, a young woman is brushing her hair with a bone-handled comb, staring into a polished piece of metal. Not a mirror. Not exactly. Mirrors exist, but they're rare, flattish, and mostly used for checking if something embarrassing is stuck to your face before a feast. She smooths down her hair and sighs. Her forehead is vast and gleaming. That's not rude, it's on purpose. Because in this century, having a forehead like a cathedral wall means you're probably intelligent, noble, or at least committed enough to pluck away most of your natural hairline. Historical fact of the day. In medieval Europe, a high forehead was considered a sign of aristocratic beauty. Women often shaved or plucked their hairlines to achieve this look, sometimes even removing their eyebrows to appear more ethereal and pure. The young woman frowns. She's run out of crushed elderflower paste, which she usually rubs into her cheeks for that fresh, just-fled-the-plague glow. Instead, she considers pinching them to simulate health. This works until she sneezes and wipes it all away with a corner of her sleeve. Beauty is effort. Even when you're wearing wool underwear, you pass her gently, nodding. She gives a tired half-smile and returns to her preening. In the shadows of the stable door, an older woman watches her, rolling her eyes with the quiet patience of someone who's seen 5 decades of beauty trends and still has all her eyebrows. "Don't waste time worrying about your looks," she mutters. mostly to the goats. Behind her, one of the goats sneezes. You wander into the market square. Here, among the muddy footprints and cabbage leaves, beauty takes on a different shape. A merchant woman hawks little pots of pigment made from crushed insects. For the lips, she declares, dipping her finger in with questionable hygiene. Rouge fit for a noblewoman or a very confident fishmonger. Across the square, a man with one tooth left, just one, and it's holding on for dear life, grins and waves. He's proud of that tooth. In a world where dentistry is medieval because, well, it is medieval, owning even one molar is practically seductive. You nod politely and stroll past a group of nuns discussing sins, soup, and skincare. One swears by cold water and prayer. Another insists a crushed snail applied nightly keeps the skin youthful. They agree to disagree. Obscure tidbit alert. Some medieval beauty remedies included bathing in wine, applying fried egg whites to the face, and using lead-based powders to lighten the complexion. Spoiler: lead is not great for your skin or your life. You sit near the fountain, watching a small child try to catch a pigeon with a carrot. He has the confidence of someone who has never heard the word rabies. The fountain water is cloudy. You wouldn't drink it, but a woman nearby is rinsing her hands in it after grinding up some herbs for a beauty tonic. Her hands now smell like thyme and questionable optimism. As the church bell tolls noon, the sound echoes off the stone walls. Even sound feels older here, like it's wearing a cloak and sandals. Historians still debate whether medieval beauty practices were strictly for attraction or part of a broader effort to display one's piety and status. Either way, the line between self-care and self-sacrifice was often blurred, especially when the solution for acne involved vinegar, burnt almonds, and prayers to St. Clair. You retreat to the edge of the village, where the trees begin. There's a cottage here, half tucked into the earth like it fell asleep mid-construction. A woman is stirring something in a pot over the fire. It smells like herbs and moss and possibly secrets. You step inside. She looks up and nods. "Need something for the skin?" she asks, peering into your soul like someone who knows what you dreamed about last Tuesday. You shrug. She takes it as a yes. She pulls down a jar filled with pale green cream. "Frog spawn and chamomile," she says proudly. Tightens the cheeks, possibly the throat. May also summon spirits. Hard to say. You smile politely, pretending to consider it. She offers you a seat by the fire. You take it. The warmth seeps in slowly. Your limbs remember how to be soft. The shadows flicker gently on the walls, and for a moment, the strangeness of beauty rituals fades into the soft rhythm of soup boiling, spoons clinking, and a cat gently snoring in the corner. The fire crackles as if trying to join the conversation. The woman, she never gives her name, pulls a threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders and gestures to a dusty shelf filled with little bottles and bundles. "That one's bat milk," she says casually, pointing to a blue vial. You blink. She smirks. "No, not really. It's almond oil. But bat milk sounds more exciting, doesn't it?" You nod. It does. Outside, The wind rustles through trees with the sigh of an old monk. The air smells like wood smoke and slightly burnt bread. Somewhere far off, a dog barks with the slow authority of someone who's been barking all week and is now on autopilot. Back inside the cottage, the woman begins to tell you a story. "You want to know how we kept our skin pale?" she asks, stirring something thick and gray in a wooden bowl. "Easy. Don't go outside. Ever. And if you must, wear a veil thick enough to stop the sun, the wind, and probably joy." You chuckle and she raises one eyebrow. "I'm not joking," she says. Historical fact for today. In many medieval European cultures, pale skin was prized because it signified wealth, nobility, and the luxury of staying indoors. Tan skin was associated with laborers who worked in the fields. She dips her finger in the bowl and taps your nose. "You smell ash and rosewater. You'd pass," she says, "if you lost about 3 pounds of eyebrow." You thank her for the compliment. You think, as she packs a few items into a cloth bundle. "For your travels," she says. You notice a strange item hanging on the wall. It's a tiny mirror framed with bone, warped and dulled by years of use. "Was that always yours?" you ask. She hesitates. "No. It belonged to a noblewoman who thought she was too ugly to be seen. She gave it to me in exchange for a potion that promised love." She shrugs. "Didn't work. She married a tax collector." Outside, the sun has dipped behind the hills. The sky is a sleepy purple, and the village begins to light tiny torches and candles. You wander back down the narrow path, brushing against branches and dry leaves. The chill of evening creeps in. Back in the village square, things have quieted. A woman sits under an awning, weaving ribbons into her daughter's hair. They're speaking softly, but the word prettiest is used at least 3 times. The daughter giggles and slaps her mother's hand when a braid goes crooked. A young man, newly bearded and trying to hide it, walks past with a swagger that says, "I own 2 tunics now." His attempts at looking dashing are undone by the goose following him closely, honking like a disapproving ant. You pass a small chapel. Inside, candlelight flickers across faded frescoes. Saints, angels, and oddly beautiful depictions of suffering. You pause at the door, taking in the scent of wax, wood, and worn-out prayers. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some monastic traditions, beauty was considered a temptation, and monks were encouraged to meditate on skulls, or even keep one in their cells, as a reminder of mortality and the futility of vanity. You sit on a stone step. A cat rubs against your leg. Possibly the same cat from earlier. Possibly not. All medieval cats look slightly judgmental. The stars begin to appear, hesitant and soft. One by one, like old friends arriving late. You hear a soft melody in the distance. A lute? A voice? Or just the wind pretending to be music? Historians still debate whether many medieval beauty rituals were truly about appearance, or whether they were simply part of daily life, wrapped in habit, healing, and hope. You lie back, arms folded behind your head, staring up into the stitched-together sky. The The stars twinkle and your breath slows. A candle flickers in a nearby window. A shutter closes gently. And somewhere, in a quiet room, someone plucks a hair from their forehead and thinks, "Closer." You wake again. Not because anything startles you, but because the world around you simply rearranges itself into morning. The way smoke moves up from chimneys, or the quiet clink of pots in the kitchen next door. You're back in your borrowed room, where the draft comes through the same stubborn crack in the wall, and the pillow still feels like someone forgot to finish stuffing it. Someone knocks. Once. Then silence. That's the medieval way of saying, "Good morning, breakfast is cold," and we're all pretending not to be hungry. You rise slowly, brush straw from your tunic, and open the door to a hallway that smells like yesterday's porridge and wood polish. A child runs past, chasing what may be a mouse or may be her imagination. Behind her, an older woman mutters about bad omens in little feet. You decide not to ask. Downstairs, a bowl of barley soup awaits you. It's lukewarm and gray, and it tastes like effort. Across the table, a man with a spectacular mustache nods at you. He's combing it with a fork. "Big feast today," he says, although he sounds unconvinced. You murmur something sleepy in reply, and he shrugs. "Gotta look your best," he adds, scooping up another spoonful of not-quite soup. Outside, the town square is already busier than yesterday. There are carts, animals, women carrying baskets full of damp herbs and spring onions, and a juggler who's clearly overconfident. A young girl watches him, face blank. She's seen better juggling, probably by a monk. Today, you're heading to the Weaver's Lane, narrow, smoky, and lined with fading fabric hanging from every window like flags from forgotten countries. You pass a group of apprentices huddled around a fire, comparing boots and love lives. "He gave her a pig," one says. "That's romance," another replies. At the very end of the lane, a woman named Adela is dyeing cloth. She has strong arms, a smudge of blue on her chin, and no patience for nonsense. She nods when you greet her and points to a bench. You sit. "Sheep urine," she says after a moment, holding up a pot of steaming liquid. "Good for setting color." You blink. She grins. "What, you thought beauty came without smells?" Historical fact of the day. In medieval times, one of the most effective fixatives for dye was stale urine, specifically fermented sheep urine. It was used to set colors into wool and other fabrics, especially vibrant blues and reds. You politely avoid sniffing your sleeve. Adela hands you a scrap of cloth dyed the color of crushed berries. "That one's for noble ladies," she says. "Makes them look paler." You tilt your head. "Paler skin, remember?" she adds. "The paler you look, the more it seems like you haven't worked a day in your life." You fold the cloth and tuck it into your satchel. She returns to her work, singing softly in a voice like sand and smoke. You wander down to the bathhouse. Not to bathe, don't get ahead of yourself, but to observe. Bathhouses are rare treats, not daily habits. But today is a feast day, and there's chatter in the air about freshness and not scaring the saints. The bathhouse is dimly lit, warm, and full of steam. A woman scrubs her elbows with sand. Another is plucking the hairs from her chin using a pair of tiny iron tongs. A man lounges in the corner, wearing only a towel and an air of tragic nobility. Someone drops a bar of soap. It vanishes, never to be seen again. Obscure cultural tidbit. Contrary to modern myth, medieval people did bathe, especially in cities and monasteries. Public bathhouses were common in many areas, though often gender-segregated and occasionally frowned upon by clergy if they became too social. At the very end of the lane, a woman named Adela is dyeing cloth. She has strong arms, a smudge of blue on her chin, and no patience for nonsense. She nods when you greet her and points to a bench. You sit. Sheep urine, she says after a moment, holding up a pot of steaming liquid. Good for setting color. You blink. She grins. What, you thought beauty came without smells? Historical fact of the day. In medieval times, one of the most effective fixatives for dye was stale urine, specifically fermented sheep urine. It was used to set colors into wool and other fabrics, especially vibrant blues and reds. You politely avoid sniffing your sleeve. Adela hands you a scrap of cloth dyed the color of crushed berries. That one's for noble ladies, she says. Makes them look paler. You tilt your head. Paler skin, remember? She adds. The paler you look, the more it seems like you haven't worked a day in your life. You fold the cloth and tuck it into your satchel. She returns to her work, singing softly in a voice like sand and smoke. You wander down to the bathhouse. Not to bathe, don't get ahead of yourself, but to observe. Bathhouses are rare treats, not daily habits. But today is a feast day, and there's chatter in the air about freshness and not scaring the saints. The bathhouse is dimly lit, warm, and full of steam. A woman scrubs her elbows with sand. Another is plucking the hairs from her chin using a pair of tiny iron tongs. A man lounges in the corner, wearing only a towel and an air of tragic nobility. Someone drops a bar of soap. It vanishes, never to be seen again. Obscure cultural tidbit. Contrary to modern myth, medieval people did bathe, especially in cities and monasteries. Public bathhouses were common in many areas, though often gender-segregated and occasionally frowned upon by clergy if they became too social. You sit by the fire pit and warm your hands. A woman offers you a cloth soaked in rose water. You accept. It smells SW. Sweet but also oddly like pepper. She explains it's for gentle exfoliation. You nod as if you understand. The mood here is strangely serene. People whisper, steam swirls, and the flames flicker lazily. It's a moment of fragile peace, where beauty becomes comfort more than competition. The towel-wrapped man begins to sing softly, a song about a girl with perfect feet and a tragic brother. It ends badly. Most medieval songs do. Later, in the churchyard, you stroll among stones and wildflowers. A young scribe sits on a bench, sketching saints with extremely dramatic cheekbones. I like them angular, he murmurs, not looking up. You ask what makes a saint beautiful. Distance, he replies, and lighting, also pain. You sit beside him and watch as he draws a halo around a weeping martyr. Her eyes are enormous. Her hands are oddly small. He glances at you. Do you want a drawing? You nod. He hands you a charcoal portrait 10 minutes later. You have no nose and the eyes of a surprised owl. You thank him anyway. Historians still debate whether the exaggeration of physical features in religious art was meant to reflect divine transcendence, or simply a result of limited artistic training. Back in the inn, the fire is lit, and someone is singing downstairs. You climb into bed, muscles tired, mind drifting. On your bedside table, the scribe's owl-like portrait stares at you lovingly. The eyes follow you. You forgive it. The wind hums outside like a lullaby from the past. You wrap the wool blanket tight and let your eyes close. Tomorrow you'll visit the herbalist. But for now, sleep. You wake to the scent of lavender and moss. The air is thicker today, damp, sleepy, a little enchanted. Someone is sweeping the courtyard with a bundle of twigs that pretends to be a broom. It makes no real difference, but it feels symbolic. You dress in silence, pull on boots that aren't quite dry from yesterday's puddle, and step outside. The streets are misty. Lanterns glow weakly in the fog, like sleepy eyes. You follow the scent of herbs to the edge of the village, to the place where fences lean and mushrooms grow where they're not supposed to. The herbalist's hut is crooked, cheerful, and covered in drying plants. A wooden crow guards the door. It nods once as you pass. Inside, the herbalist is boiling something in a pot. She's younger than you expect, with streaks of mud on her face and wild hair tied with vines. You look like someone who needs a potion, she says, not unkindly. You admit you're curious about beauty recipes. She grins. You want the love potion or the clear skin one? You raise an eyebrow. Same ingredients, she shrugs. Just different moon phases. She hands you a bowl of paste the color of sadness. For the face, she adds, tightens everything, even your feelings. Historical fact. Many medieval herbalists used crushed mint, marigold, rosemary, and vinegar as beauty remedies. Some recipes promised not only clearer skin, but better luck, good dreams, and stronger teeth, though results were inconsistent. She offers you a cup of nettle tea. Tastes like bravery. On a nearby shelf, you spot a jar labeled Essence of Mirror Regret. She laughs when you point it out. That's just honey and garlic. Works better if you believe it. You thank her and step outside. The fog has lifted slightly, and the sun winks through the clouds. You follow the road to a small clearing where village girls are gathering flowers. They weave them into crowns, bracelets, and something that may have once been a dog collar. A boy nearby is braiding dandelions into his own hair with the seriousness of a knight preparing for battle. Do I look handsome? He asks a passing goat. The goat chews thoughtfully and says nothing. You sit by the well and watch. Beauty here is play, not pressure. It's petals and giggles, not powders and prayers. One girl ties a daisy to her friend's braid, and declares her the Queen of Mud. The friend bows solemnly. Obscure tidbit. In rural traditions, especially during spring festivals, young people often decorated themselves with natural elements, flowers, herbs, even colored clay. These rituals were tied to fertility, community pride, and occasional matchmaking. The village priest walks by and tries to pretend he doesn't see any of it. You rise and stroll through the fields. A scarecrow waves at you, or maybe it's just the wind. Either way, you wave back. Back in town, there's a tailor fitting a noblewoman for her feast day dress. It's gold and blue with sleeves so long they could double as blankets. The noblewoman looks exhausted. She asked for slimming, the tailor whispers. So we added 15 buttons. No one's noticed yet that she can't breathe. The noblewoman turns, eyes glassy. Does it make my forehead look intelligent? The tailor nods. Everyone nods. Historians still debate whether elaborate medieval garments were designed more for aesthetics or for status signaling. Either way, many couldn't be worn without assistance, or a complete disregard for mobility. You return to the inn just as rain begins to fall. The sky turns the color of pewter. You sit by the hearth, drying your boots, watching as drops race each other down the window glass. Tonight's dinner is lentil stew and pickled something. You eat slowly. A bard is telling a story nearby, something about a knight who fell in love with a painting. It ends with him marrying a real woman who looked nothing like the painting, but owned a small vineyard. Everyone agrees it's a happy ending. Upstairs, your bed waits. The blanket is still itchy. The pillow is still underwhelming. But the fire crackles, and your satchel now smells of mint and smoke. Outside, the rain continues gently. A lullaby on the rooftops. You let your thoughts drift. To daisy crowns, to linen dyed in sheep's secrets, to saints with dramatic cheekbones, and to strange pastes in stranger jars. You turn onto your side and sigh, soft and full of warm dust, and sleep finds you, beautiful in your own bewildered way. You awaken to birdsong and the clatter of someone aggressively not being quiet downstairs. A rooster yells something unintelligible in the courtyard. You respond by hiding under your blanket for 3 extra minutes. It's not cowardice, it's strategy. When you finally sit up, the light in your room has that soft, cloudy quality that makes everything feel like a painting. Or a memory. Or a painting of a memory. Your tunic smells faintly of nettle tea and ancient dust, but it's dry. You take that as a win. Downstairs, the innkeeper's daughter is arranging jars of pickles by size. It's for the aesthetic, she tells you without looking up. She gestures toward a small loaf of bread and a suspiciously quiet boiled egg. You thank her. The egg thanks no one. Today your feet take you along the Merchant's Row. An alley so narrow it feels like walking through a conversation. Each stall is shouting in its own way. You see velvet, copper pots, dried fish tied with twine, and at least one stall selling wigs made of goat hair. The merchant assures you it's high fashion in Bohemia. You pass a mirror-maker's tent where warped glass leans against crooked posts. The mirrors reflect slightly distorted versions of you, taller, wider, more dramatic. One gives you a chin worthy of royal portraits. Another makes your forehead so massive it could host a jousting match. The mirror maker beams. All natural, he claims. No witchcraft. Just expensive mistakes. Historical fact. Glass mirrors in the medieval period were rare, small, and often flawed. Most people relied on polished metal or still water for self-reflection, literal and otherwise. You thank the mirror maker and leave with your sense of self-image slightly reshaped, mostly forehead-shaped. At the next stall, a perfumer is ladling a thick amber syrup into tiny ceramic pots. Rose, clove, and ox gall, he says, proudly handing you a sample. You sniff. It smells like candlelight and very clean cows. A nobleman in line behind you leans over and whispers. You're supposed to dab it behind your ears, so the angels know you're serious. You nod as if that makes perfect sense. Nearby, a small boy is selling painted stones with faces on them. This one's a merchant. This one's a bishop. This one has regrets. You buy the one with regrets. It winks at you. Probably a crack in the paint. Probably. Around the corner, you come upon a shady little nook where women are embroidering by hand. Their fingers dance across cloth, pulling colors into flowers, deer, and one surprisingly good chicken. A girl with curls poking out from her bonnet holds up a tunic stitched with blue vines. For a wedding, she explains. She asked for something that looked rich but modest. So I added extra thread and pretended it was an accident. She smiles. You admire her work. People don't always want beauty, she continues. They want the idea of beauty, the whisper of it. You sit for a while, letting the rhythm of stitching and quiet laughter fill the air. A cat naps nearby, belly up, with the smugness of someone who's never worn a corset. Obscure cultural tidbit. In medieval Europe, embroidery was not only a decorative art, but also a coded language. Specific flowers, colors, and even the number of stitches could carry hidden messages, especially in gifts, wedding garments, and religious robes. You try your hand at stitching. Your vine looks more like a confused worm. Everyone is very polite about it. Later, you visit the local painter, an older man whose hands are always stained with ochre. His studio is filled with unfinished portraits, saints with bold eyebrows, and one very bored-looking dog in a toga. I paint what they ask for, he mutters, squinting at a canvas. But secretly I always make the noses bigger. Real people have noses. He offers to paint you. You sit, trying not to fidget. He squints again. You've got the eyes of someone who knows soup can lie. You're not sure what that means, but you choose to take it as a compliment. He paints quickly, muttering to himself. Too pale is noble. Too tan is suspicious. A little shadow under the eyes says, I read poetry and might poison you. That's fashion these days. You nod, slowly. Historians still debate whether the ideal features in medieval portraits were based on actual beauty standards, or simply the painter's personal quirks. When he's done, your portrait looks slightly haunted, vaguely poetic, and unmistakably like someone who regrets that second cup of nettle tea. You thank him and head back to the inn. The regret stone in your pocket feels warmer than before. That night, you sit by the fire as the wind howls gently outside. A traveler in a damp cloak is telling a story about a queen who fell in love with her own reflection and accidentally declared war on her mirror. Everyone agrees this, too, is a tragic romance. Your eyelids grow heavy. The fire murmurs. Upstairs, your room is cold and welcoming, like an old friend who never overtalks. You crawl under the blanket, holding your stitched vine and regret rock close. You're a little threadbare, a little tired, and, dare you say it, a little beautiful in your own unpainted way. Sleep curls beside you like a cat. The morning begins not with a rooster or clattering pots, but with silence. That rare, velvety quiet that settles only when everyone else is asleep or pretending to be. You lie there for a long moment, eyes open, watching the slow dance of dust in a beam of light. Your breath feels louder than it should. Eventually, you rise and slip out the door with your boots in hand. Today, you're visiting the convent. Not for punishment. Not yet. The convent is perched at the edge of the town, surrounded by a wall of ivy and stubborn rose bushes. It smells of beeswax, lavender, and decisions. Inside, the corridors are hushed, the air cool, and every footstep seems to apologize for existing. Sister Marita greets you with a smile so peaceful it should be taxed. She leads you through the herb garden, where rows of plants are labeled with charming optimism. Thistle for courage, marjoram for memory, basil for reasons. You pass a group of novices sowing new habits. One looks up and whispers, "We're allowed one vanity. Mine is thumb rings." You nod solemnly. In the scriptorium, the nuns are copying manuscripts by hand. You hear the faint scratch of quill on vellum, the occasional sigh, and the distant sound of someone losing an argument with a jar of ink. Sister Cecilia shows you a page filled with tiny golden flowers and neat black script. "Every letter is a prayer," she explains. "So I try not to sneeze while writing." You ask about beauty in a place like this. She thinks for a moment. Clean lines, balanced margins, illuminated letters. That's our version of pretty. But we still keep mirrors. Small ones, tucked away. She pulls a tiny glass from her robe. It reflects your nose and nothing else. Historical fact. Despite vows of modesty, many convents in the medieval world allowed small personal comforts. Some nuns used herbal skin balms, wore rings beneath their sleeves, or kept scented cloths tucked into their prayer books. You join the sisters for a midday meal of barley stew, lentils, and what might once have been a carrot. The conversation is gentle, full of scripture and scandalously whispered opinions about parchment quality. Afterward, you visit the chapel. It glows with candlelight, gold leaf, and the quiet patience of stone. The stained glass windows cast soft colors across your face. You stand there a long time, letting the colors change you, blue to green to red to silence. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some convents, certain colors in stained glass were believed to reflect moral qualities. Blue represented purity, green symbolized rebirth, and red, when used, often stood for divine love or, depending on the nun's opinion, very good shoes. Sister Marita finds you later near the cloister. Did you find what you were looking for? You admit you're not sure. That's fine, she says. The search is the holy part. She presses a dried rose into your hand. For when you forget your worth, you walk back toward town as the sky begins to soften into evening. In the square, children are dancing in a circle to the tune of someone whistling through a comb. A group of old men are arguing about whether clouds count as a good omen or a bad haircut. You smile. At the inn, someone has left a cup of something steaming by the fire. You drink it. Tastes like apples and mysteries. Upstairs, your satchel feels heavier. It holds scraps of embroidery, one stern-looking portrait, a regret rock, and a rose pressed between pages that smell of ink and incense. Historians still debate whether medieval beauty rituals were truly about attraction, or simply rituals of self-comfort and control in a world often ruled by discomfort and fate. The window creaks as it closes itself. A breeze sighs and steps away. You curl beneath the blanket, the fire murmuring its low lullaby, and sleep, as always, finds you mid-thought. The day greets you with the kind of weather poets call contemplative. The sky is the color of a well-used pewter mug. Rain drips in a steady rhythm from the eaves, and everything outside looks slightly more poetic than it did yesterday. Even your reflection in a puddle seems to sigh wistfully. You don't mind the drizzle. In fact, you pull your cloak tighter and head out into it, feet splashing lightly over cobbled streets slick with memory. Today, you're headed to a manor house, not yours unless you're hiding something, but one open to visitors for a feast preparation. And more importantly, for its noble household's utterly impossible standards of beauty. You probably won't make it through this day with your ego intact. The manor looms ahead with just the right amount of intimidation. Its tall, timbered walls lean inward like gossiping old women, and its windows squint as though unimpressed with your posture. The steward, a man who looks as if he's been ironing his tunic since sunrise, welcomes you inside. Wipe your boots. Twice. You do. Inside, the air smells of rosemary, beeswax polish, and baked apples. You follow the scent past tapestries that depict noble hunts, battle scenes, and one very dashing unicorn wearing a crown. Probably symbolic. Hopefully. In the main hall, servants bustle around with trays, and a noblewoman perches on a cushioned chair like a judgmental sparrow. She wears a headdress so large it must have its own weather system. 2 braids coil beside her temples, each the length of a good novella. Her face is pale, unnaturally so, and her cheeks bear tiny dots of rouge the size of regrets. I use lead white, she explains brightly. It gives the skin that fragile, otherworldly glow. You wonder how many other worlds are currently suing for damages. Historical fact. In medieval Europe, upper-class women used a mixture called Venetian ceruse, a lead-based cosmetic, to lighten their skin. It was toxic, but it created a fashionable pallor that suggested wealth, leisure, and zero exposure to honest sunlight. She gestures to a girl beside her. This is Alice. She's to be married soon, so we're stretching her forehead. You blink. Alice nods with resignation. Her hairline has been plucked several finger-widths back. The wider the brow, the wiser the bride, she murmurs. Or at least that's what they say in Flanders. You consider your own modestly unmodified forehead and try not to look insecure. Further down the hall, a tailor is fitting gowns for the evening. You watch as fabric in shades of cream, crimson, and moss is draped, pinned, and hemmed. One nobleman stands on a stool, arms raised like he's about to take flight. His tunic is being altered to cinch more dramatically at the waist. It makes the shoulders look broader, the tailor explains, and the belly less medieval. A young page peers at the pattern and whispers, "My dream is to wear sleeves that brush the ground even when I raise my arms." You respect the ambition. Obscure cultural tidbit. During certain periods, especially in the 14th and 15th centuries, fashion dictated incredibly long sleeves, some trailing several feet. These sleeves, called tippets or hanging sleeves, were largely useless but deeply fashionable among the elite. You spot a man struggling to walk down a staircase because of his sleeves. He does so with quiet dignity and only a little help from gravity. In the manor kitchens, flour dusts the air like battlefield smoke. Cooks argue over which spices say generous versus desperate. A pot of pottage bubbles with a smell that is either ambitious or confused. You try to help stir. The cook shoves a spice pouch into your hand. If you can't make them prettier, make the food spicier. Same thing in the end. You nod gravely and add a pinch or two. Later, in the Ladies' Solar, noble women compare beauty rituals. One boasts about a salve made of crushed pearls and vinegar. Another recommends boiled hedgehog fat for lustrous hair. A third simply says, "Sleep in goose feathers and think pure thoughts." You write all this down in your mental notebook under beauty or witchcraft. Unclear. A greyhound in a velvet collar walks in and immediately judges your socks. You're certain of it. Historians still debate whether the extreme practices of medieval noblewomen were driven by competition, genuine belief, or sheer boredom during embroidery hours. You wander back to the hall and spot Alice again, now with her forehead even more heroic in scale. She smiles weakly. "I'll look like the Virgin Mary in the altarpiece," she says. You want to say something encouraging but settle for, "Your symmetry is intimidating." She blushes. You both stare out the window as rain continues to fall like soft applause. That night, after a small feast, your spice choices were noted and mildly appreciated. You walk home with damp boots and the faint smell of hedgehog ointment in your hair. At the inn, your regret stone now seems to have a faint frown. You light a single candle, sit on your cot, and gaze at your reflection in a tiny mirror. Skin a little flushed from the fire, hair just wild enough to suggest poetry, forehead comfortably average. You smile, then yawn, then sleep. This morning smells like wood smoke and honey. The innkeeper has made oatcakes. You eat 3, slowly, while staring out the window and listening to a bird argue with itself. Today is market day, and the town square has transformed into a theater of chaos and commerce. You pull your cloak tight, check that your regret stone is still in your pouch. It is, and step into the crowd. The noise hits first. Bells, barking, bargaining, laughter. Someone is singing about turnips. Loudly. It's oddly comforting. You weave through the crowd, pausing at stalls that sell everything from pewter spoons to lace so delicate it disappears in the sun. A woman with 6 baskets on her head is arguing about cabbage quality. You believe she will win. You stop at a booth covered in combs. Yes, combs. Horn, bone, and wood, each carved into swirls, birds, or vaguely concerned lions. The vendor leans in. A fine comb gives a fine life, she says. You pick one shaped like a goose and promise to use it wisely. A few steps away, a bard is reciting poetry about the moon's indifference to human affairs. No one listens except a goat. You toss him a coin anyway. The goat nods in thanks. Nearby, a vendor is applying blush to a carved mannequin. Practice, she says. Some faces are a battlefield. She offers to do your face. You sit. She dusts your cheeks, lines your brows with soot, and dabs a drop of rose water at your wrists. Now, she says, you look like a noble who's been emotionally betrayed. That's very fashionable. Historical fact. Blush or rouge was widely used in medieval times by both men and women of the upper classes. It suggested vitality and wealth, though the ingredients could range from berries to crushed insects. You pass a group of young men trying to grow beards by staring at a monk with a particularly majestic one. They believe proximity encourages growth. You respect their commitment. A nearby apothecary booth advertises breath potions and complexion balancers. One jar is labeled for moral purity, internal use. You buy the smallest one. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some medieval apothecaries sold virtue potions that were believed to improve not just one's health or beauty, but also one's soul. Results were mixed. In the center of the market, a crowd is gathered around a painter offering instant portraits. He dips his brush into ochre and begins sketching a farmer's profile. The nose is heroic. The chin, ambitious. You sit for your turn. The artist squints. You've got a face like a medieval proverb. You nod solemnly. When he's done, the portrait looks like someone who's definitely survived at least one siege. You thank him and move on. As the market begins to close, you walk back with your new goose comb, a fresh regret potion, and a face that looks heartbreak adjacent. At the inn, the fire crackles. You show your portrait to the cat. The cat blinks once and lies down on it. You sip nettle tea and watch the candle flicker. Outside, the moon rises over the uneven rooftops of a world that tried very hard to be beautiful, even if it wasn't always safe or smart. Historians still debate whether medieval beauty was about vanity, virtue, or simply surviving judgmental greyhounds. Your reflection in the window is blurry but kind. You slip under the blanket with the taste of honey still on your tongue, and sleep comes before you can finish your thought. The morning comes quietly, like it tiptoed in on woolen socks.
No bells. No shouting.
Just a low golden glow leaking in through the wooden shutters, and the soft hiss of last night's fire curling into ashes. You blink awake, unsure of what century your dreams left you in. Still the medieval one, thankfully. Today you visit a monastery. Not for religious reasons, though the monks would certainly welcome you with open scrolls, but because beauty standards didn't stop at noble courts and town markets. In the quiet, cloistered halls of religious life, appearances were managed with a different kind of pressure. Less blush, more piety. You pull on your thickest wool tunic, the one that smells vaguely like last autumn, and head out into the chill, guided by the faint tolling of a distant bell. You probably won't make it through this day without being shushed by a monk. The monastery sits on a low hill outside town, nestled between an orchard and a sheep pasture. The gate is open, but everything about the place suggests a soft kind of order. The walls are covered in ivy that knows its place. The stones beneath your boots have been worn smooth by 1,000 slow, deliberate footsteps. You're met by a monk whose robe is patched at the elbows and who smells faintly of beeswax and Latin. "Welcome," he says. "We're cultivating humility today." You nod as if that's a thing you've been meaning to do, too. Inside the scriptorium, it's a symphony of scratching quills. Rows of monks bend over parchment, copying texts so carefully that even their blinks seem rehearsed. The air smells like ink, vellum, and the long, slow ache of concentration. You sit beside one, Brother Emmerich, who is illuminating a page with tiny golden vines. "I find beauty in repetition," he says, "even when it ruins my spine." He shows you a small mirror kept by his side. "To check my posture," he explains, "but you suspect it also serves a subtler purpose." His tonsured head gleams faintly in the morning light. Historical fact: monks, especially in Benedictine and Cistercian orders, were expected to maintain modest appearances. Tonsured heads, clean robes, no jewelry. But some monasteries developed unique aesthetics through the artwork in their manuscripts, architecture, and even orderly gardens. Later, in the refectory, the monks gather to eat in silence while a single brother reads from a heavy book. The food is plain: bread, lentils, cheese, more bread. But you notice something peculiar. Several monks have been polishing their wooden spoons to a shine, each carved with delicate symbols: crosses, vines, tiny animals. You hold up your own spoon, which is splintered and slightly curved in the wrong direction. Brother Anselm pats your shoulder. "Spoon envy is not a sin, technically." You both chew in quiet companionship. After the meal, you follow Brother Emmerich to the herb garden. Everything is low to the ground and orderly. He shows you a calendula plant used for skin salves and a patch of violet leaves steeped for soul-cleansing teas. You pretend to take notes. He points to his hands. "See these calluses? From grinding ink. You'd be surprised how many compliments I get." You are surprised. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some monastic communities took great pride in their hands, especially calluses earned through holy labor. Hands became a quiet badge of beauty. not soft or scented, but marked by devotion and restraint. In the chapel, light spills through narrow windows in long golden ribbons. The choir begins to chant, slow, steady tones that vibrate in your chest more than your ears. You sit in the back pew, feeling your breathing slow, your thoughts drift. The monk beside you leans over and whispers, "You have a very meditative posture." You whisper back, "I might be falling asleep." He nods with quiet approval. Historians still debate whether monastic simplicity influenced broader fashion or remained its own island of aesthetic values. But within their walls, the rules of beauty were clear. No vanity, but plenty of polish. By afternoon, you're back on the road, pockets stuffed with lavender sprigs and a new appreciation for tidy hedgerows. At the inn, you soak your feet in warm water and whisper your regrets to the regret stone, which has grown surprisingly smooth. You fall asleep picturing golden vines curling across a parchment page, looping gently into the next dream. Today you wake to laughter, not wild or rowdy, but gentle, communal, and entirely too early for your tastes. Peeking out the window, you see a line of people gathering near the edge of town, their baskets full of ribbons, pastries, and what appears to be rouge. It's festival day. Your innkeeper beams as she hands you a warm oat bun and a wreath of ivy. "You'll want this," she says. "You probably won't make it through this day without being crowned for something," she adds cryptically. The festival is called the Day of Fair Forms. You ask if it's a religious thing. "No," someone replies. "It's worse. It's a beauty contest. But it's not just about faces. It's about hair braiding, boot shining, butter sculpting, and poetic flattery." You follow the crowd to the town green, which has been transformed. Garlands hang from trees, musicians warm up flutes and lyres, and a judge's table is set up with 3 wooden chairs and 1 goat. The goat is named Agnes. She judges silently but definitively. First event, the hair parade. A line of hopefuls present elaborate hairstyles. Braids like ropes, curls wrapped in ribbons, and one person whose entire coiffure is shaped like a ship. You clap respectfully for all. A child asks if your hair is resting or retired. You ruffle it and say, "Both." Next, the butter sculpture showcase. Contestants reveal creamy creations shaped like saints, unicorns, and in one case, a very detailed ear. A noblewoman leans over. Beauty is fleeting, but dairy is forever. You agree, mouth full of oat bun. Historical fact. Medieval fairs often included competitions based on beauty and skill. Physical appearance, especially in women, was judged publicly, with prizes ranging from ribbons to potential marriage proposals. After the flattery round, you're told your eyes remind someone of candlelight during a blackout. Comes the dreaded final event, the Walk of Esteem. Contestants walk slowly across the green while judges evaluate posture, grace, and general aura. You try your best, somewhere between mystical bard and reasonably sober peasant. Agnes the goat narrows her eyes. The winners are announced as the sun reaches its peak. There are cheers, wreaths, and a shocking number of people weeping over decorative butter. You're awarded Best Natural Ambiguity, a title no one can quite define but everyone respects. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some towns, awards like Most Modest Gaze or Hands Most Suited for Holy Tasks were actually given out, blending beauty with moral symbolism. That evening, a dance is held. The music is lilting and slow, like a memory that forgot its words. You sway awkwardly with a baker's daughter, then gracefully with an elderly knight who claims he once waltzed with the queen. You suspect he means metaphorically, but don't ask. As the sky turns velvet blue, lanterns are lit. People drink warm cider, compare flower crowns, and gently argue about who should have won Best Cheeks. A man with a lute begins a song about freckles that makes everyone sigh. You sit under an apple tree, rubbing your regret stone like a good luck charm, and watch as fireflies begin to blink into the air. Historians still debate whether these festivals were true celebrations of local beauty or just excuses to eat cakes shaped like saints. But as someone who now owns a ribbon labeled ambiguous, you find comfort in the uncertainty. Sleep finds you on a bench, head tilted, wreath askew, surrounded by snoring strangers and a goat who finally seems impressed. The sun rises lazily, like it's peeking over the curtain of an old stage play. The town you've been staying in is quiet now, recovering from yesterday's festival with the slow grace of someone who danced too long and drank one cider too many. You stretch under your thin wool blanket, brush crumbs from your tunic, and notice a new ache in your back. A festival souvenir, perhaps. Today, you're leaving the comfort of towns and winding toward the manor of a minor noble family. Not for a banquet, not for a duel, but to examine something far more delicate. The brutal expectations of aristocratic beauty behind closed, velvet-draped doors. You probably won't make it through this day without being offered rosewater for something. The road to the manor is quiet and leafy, lined with hedgerows and the occasional squirrel that seems to be judging your walking speed. The manor itself emerges from the mist like a secret. Stone walls, ivy that's clearly been trimmed by someone with opinions, a gate that swings open with suspicious politeness. You're greeted by Lady Isabeau. She is tall, perfumed like jasmine and wood smoke, and carries a small silver mirror as if it's fused to her palm. She smiles at you with all her teeth. "Welcome," she says. "Do come in before the air wrinkles you." You obey. Quickly. Inside, the manor hums with quiet maintenance. Servants polish already shiny candelabras. A small dog wears a cape. The furniture is so ornate it seems almost rude to sit on. In the solar, Lady Isabeau offers you a seat and a small candied fig. "We spend a good part of our lives," she says, "managing what others will say when we leave the room." You nod, chewing nervously. She shows you her collection of cosmetic recipes, carefully copied from Latin scrolls. They include crushed pearls, vinegar rinses, powdered lead, and, for the brave, bat's blood. You eye her skin. It's glowing, and perhaps a little haunted. Historical fact. Aristocratic medieval women often used lead-based cosmetics to achieve the era's prized pale and perfect look. Unfortunately, prolonged use could cause hair loss, skin damage, and, in extreme cases, lead poisoning. Beauty was literally deadly. Later, you're given a tour of the dressing room, a chamber of perfumes, combs, tweezers, powders, pastes, and one very nervous servant whose sole job is eyebrow supervision. You watch as a maid demonstrates how to shave a hairline higher for a more elegant forehead. Another sculpts a braid so intricately it should probably be taxidermied. Lady Isabeau sighs. It takes 3 hours to look effortlessly divine. For if you slept wrong. She peers into her mirror. Do I look subtly mournful today? You tell her yes, absolutely. She smiles. Perfect. That's what the tapestry calls for. In the hall, you meet her husband, Lord Renaud. He's inspecting his beard with the intensity of someone diffusing a bomb. We must look important, he mutters, dabbing rose water onto his temples. Otherwise people won't fear us or marry our daughter. Their daughter, Eloise, sits near the window, holding a falcon and wearing an expression that suggests she's seen through the entire charade since age 7. She waves. The falcon does not. Obscure cultural tidbit. In noble households, physical appearance could directly influence marriage alliances. Families kept appearance diaries to track skincare regimens, hair condition, and even emotional expression. One young noblewoman was reportedly punished for smiling too much at dinner. By evening, you're invited to stay for supper. The meal is dazzling. Roasted quail, herb custard, and a wine so strong it makes your thoughts blurry. You excuse yourself to wander the gallery, where portraits of the family stare down with flawless skin and severe cheekbones. You pause at one painting that looks suspiciously familiar. Ah, says a maid, that was Isabeau's great-grandmother. They say her skin was so pale she once startled a deer into fainting. You stare into the great-grandmother's eyes and whisper, that tracks. Back in your guest room, you find a small gift on your pillow, a jar of violet paste and a note that reads, for under-eye melancholy, use sparingly. You smear a bit beneath your eyes. You instantly feel 3% more tragic. Historians still debate whether noble beauty practices were sincerely believed to reflect virtue or simply performed as status theater. Either way, the pressure was real and occasionally toxic. You fall asleep beneath velvet blankets, your pores tingling faintly with medieval regret, and your dreams filled with eyebrows that whisper. Your sleep is dreamless. Either the violet paste was magical or your brain simply gave up for the night. When you wake, it's still early, barely a whisper of dawn, but Lady Isabeau is already dressed. Her eyes are shadowed in soft kohl. Her sleeves are starched into perfection. Breakfast is a performance, she says. You nod and mentally prepare. You probably won't make it through this day without rethinking your entire relationship with breakfast attire. Today, you're joining Isabeau and a few other noblewomen for a visit to the bathhouse, an elite, semi-private affair just outside town. You ride in a curtained carriage filled with sachets of herbs, cushions stuffed with goose down, and a servant whose sole purpose is to hold the lavender. Cleansing is not just for the body, Isabeau says dreamily. It's for image. It says, I have time for this. You arrive at the bathhouse. From the outside, it looks like a modest stone building. From the inside, it's a beauty cathedral. The bathhouse is warm and perfumed. There are tall windows that cast golden light across the tiles. Steam rises from copper tubs. The air hums with quiet gossip. A noblewoman named Blanche unrolls her towel like a knight unsheathing a sword. Beauty is war, she says. Another woman sighs. My shoulders are tired from being admired. You try not to laugh, but the steam helps hide your face. Historical fact. Medieval bathhouses, especially in southern Europe, were places not only for hygiene, but for socializing and displaying one's health and refinement. Regular bathing was seen as a marker of class and culture, though sometimes frowned upon by particularly austere religious orders. In your own small tub, a servant adds a few rose petals and hums quietly. Your skin prickles from the hot water. You feel yourself becoming a slightly better version of whatever this week requires. Next to you, Isabeau applies a honey and almond scrub to her forearms. I once heard honey prevents treason, she says. Blanche rolls her eyes. Only if you eat it with mint. A long pause. Then Blanche laughs. I made that up. But didn't it sound true? You watch as they apply face masks with brushes shaped like swan feathers. One woman measures her own cheek symmetry using a mirrored lattice. Another tries on a necklace, just to feel its vibration. You realize something peculiar. They're working as hard at this as any scribe, knight, or carpenter. Not out of vanity necessarily, but survival. These rituals are currency, and they know the rates change daily. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some noblewomen wore small facial patches, tiny black dots in specific patterns meant to draw attention to their best features or signal certain emotions. One dot near the mouth might mean flirtation. One on the temple, melancholy. The original emoji system. After a few hours, the group redresses in layers of linen and wool. Hair is rebraided. Faces are dusted with crushed roses and powdered pearl. You feel like you've survived some elegant rite of passage. Back at the manor, the ladies prepare for afternoon callers. Lady Isabeau adjusts your collar with quiet approval. You look slightly noble now, she says. You nod. It's the nicest thing anyone's said to you this century. Historians still debate whether noblewomen viewed beauty work as oppressive or empowering, but to live within the system, they had to master it. That evening, as you walk the manor grounds under a lilac sky, you feel a new understanding. The flower crowns, the mirror gazes, the embroidered gloves. None of it is arbitrary. It's all armor, and it smells faintly of rosemary. You rest that night with your head on a lavender-stuffed pillow and dream of swan feather brushes and silent, knowing glances across the bathhouse steam. You awaken to the gentle crackle of a fire in the hearth. Outside your chamber window, a gray sky hangs low over the manor grounds. Even the birds sound muffled, as if they too have taken a vow of soft, contemplative silence. You feel rested but also wary, because today you're not observing beauty from the cushion-lined gallery of noblewomen. You're heading back into the village to spend time with the women who make beauty possible. And no, this isn't the relaxing kind of field trip. You probably won't make it through this day without catching flour in your hair, ash under your nails, and the judgment of at least 3 old women who've seen too much. The walk to the village is damp. The roads are muddy, the air thick with smoke from morning hearths. You pass a group of boys rolling a hoop down the lane with sticks and arguing over whether St. Apollonia had good teeth. No one wins that debate. At the edge of the market, you meet a washerwoman named Dagna. She's short, square-shouldered, and stirring a pot of lye-soaked laundry like it owes her money. "You're the one asking about faces, aren't you?" she says, not unkindly. "Follow me. Just don't step in that." You almost do. Dagna leads you to a shed that smells of soap, nettles, smoke, and secrets. Inside are bundles of herbs, jars of goose fat, and several mysterious bags that twitch when touched. "This is where pretty starts," she says. "Not up at the manor, not with their mirrors and perfume. Here with the stinky bits." She shows you her stock: crushed bark for whitening teeth, dried rosemary for hair rinses, sour whey for tightening skin, charcoal for eyeliner, beet juice for lips. Some ingredients double as rat repellent, others as love potions. One jar is simply labeled, "Don't ask, just works." Historical fact: medieval beauty treatments were often prepared at home by women using common herbs, animal fats, ashes, and even fermented dairy. Recipes were passed down through generations, usually orally. Many rural women were skilled chemists, though without the title or the pay. A young girl named Enid stops by with a basket of duck eggs and a question. "Will egg whites make my cheeks less blotchy?" Dagna thinks. "If you don't eat them, yes." The girl nods, sets the basket down, and runs off into the fog. Later, a nobleman's steward comes by for beard oil. Then a widow trading eels for soap. Then a priest's sister wanting something holy but hydrating. You begin to see it. This hidden network of cosmetic barter, built from the ground up, quiet, smoky, and deeply practical. You help Dagna grind dried sage. Your arms ache. Your nose tingles. You now smell faintly like an entire apothecary shelf. Obscure cultural tidbit: some medieval women believed the phase of the moon affected the success of beauty treatments. Waxing moon? Good for hair growth. Waning? Time for plucking. Dagna laughs at this, but still won't make rosewater on a full moon. "Just in case," she says. At midday, Dagna brings you to the riverbank, where a group of women are gathered for hair washing. The water is cold. The soap is homemade. The laughter is real. They swap stories, examine scalps, offer critiques and compliments with equal frankness. "She's got a forehead like Saint Lucia. Try vinegar. My aunt swears by it. God's wounds. That braid is a miracle." You sit quietly and listen. These women are crafting beauty the way a blacksmith forges steel: hot, messy, strong, and necessary. Historians still debate whether rural beauty practices mirrored elite ones or existed in their own distinct culture. The answer seems to be both. Refined ideals trickled down, but real survival sculpted the everyday face. That night, back at the manor, you look into the guest room mirror. Your reflection is smoky-eyed, wind-burned, and smells of pine and vinegar. You look real, and you sleep deeply, your dreams laced with nettles, laughter, and soft river water ripples. The morning comes with a chill and a knock on your chamber door. A servant enters holding a letter, sealed with wax, stamped with a crest you've never seen before. It smells faintly of lavender and formality. Lady Isabeau is sending you to a nearby abbey, a place of reflection. She tells you at breakfast, buttering her toast with the elegance of a queen, and contemplation, and, most likely, nun-based judgment. You probably won't make it through this day without being silently disapproved of by someone holding a candle. The road to the abbey winds through fields of barley and sleep-slow cattle. You pass a shrine to St. Agnes, patron of girls and chastity, decorated with a crown of dried violets. When you reach the abbey gates, you're greeted not by silence, but by Sister Euphemia, who is fixing a broken latch with a hammer and a truly alarming glare. "We expected you earlier," she says. "You weren't expected at all." But you nod politely. She leads you inside. The abbey is a fortress of modesty. Stone walls, narrow windows, drafts with opinions. The other sisters move quietly through the halls, candles in one hand, discipline in the other. And yet, in the scriptorium you find a different story. Rows of women bent over parchment, copying texts not just of saints but of herbs, medical diagrams, and yes, cosmetic recipes. "Even the soul," says Sister Euphemia, "must survive the mirror." She hands you a scroll titled, "Concerning the Purifying Waters of the Face." You scan it. It involves wine, marigold petals, and a chant. Historical fact: some medieval convents served as centers of medicinal knowledge, especially concerning women's health and hygiene. Nuns compiled treatises on skincare, menstruation, childbirth, and even appearance, often balancing church doctrine with practical needs. You're invited to observe a convent beauty ritual, gentle, intentional, more meditative than decorative. A warm cloth soaked in thyme water, a prayer whispered while combing hair, a dab of rose oil at the temples. To honor the mind's gate, one sister explains, this isn't glamour, it's preservation, not of youth but of self. In the garden, Sister Apollonia teaches you how to distill lavender. She plucks a leaf and crushes it in your hand. "For the nerves," she says. Then she adds, "and for the rats, but mostly the nerves." She smiles, a rare thing in this stone and candle world. You learn about cold creams made from sheep's wool and crushed almonds, about poultices for under-eye shadows, about using bluebells to draw out sadness. The abbey may be strict, but it understands tenderness. Obscure cultural tidbit: in some convents, nuns were allowed to use subtle beauty treatments for health, but not for vanity. Loopholes abounded. A lotion for dryness might accidentally improve complexion. A balm for bruises? Excellent for evening skin tone. As the day ends, the sisters gather in the chapel, bathed in candlelight and plainchant. You sit at the back, wrapped in a borrowed shawl, feeling both small and honored. The wind moves through the cracked windows like a memory. The candlelight wobbles, and for a moment the world feels washed clean of artifice. Just humans, soft faces, tired souls, trying. Historians still debate whether nuns practice beauty out of ritual habit or secret desire, but the written recipes remain, tucked between psalms. You sleep in the abbey guest room on a straw mattress. Creaks when you breathe, but your dreams are calm, lavender-scented, and filled with warm cloths and kind silence. The sun rises slow and coppery across the sky, more of a suggestion than a statement. You wake to the toll of a small bell echoing softly through the convent halls, like the world itself is whispering. Time moves gently here. Your stay at the abbey has come to an end, but something about the rhythm, the quiet scraping of sandals on stone, the scent of rosemary in the corridors, has etched itself into your bones. Today you return to the manor, but first you'll make one final stop, to visit the painter. You probably won't make it through this day without being painted in some slightly unflattering medieval lighting. The workshop is tucked behind the market square, inside a cottage that smells like walnut oil and stale bread. The painter, Master Arnulf, is already dabbing pigment onto a wooden panel when you arrive. He doesn't look up. Sit. Don't smile. And if you fidget, I'll make you look like St. Lawrence. You sit. You do not fidget. A sparrow hops along the windowsill and watches the proceedings with more grace than you manage. The painter's studio is a controlled chaos. Crushed minerals, dried fish glue, eggshell palettes, a half-finished Madonna weeping on the back wall. You glance around. On one canvas, a noblewoman with a high, pale brow stares out with unreadable elegance. On another, a merchant's wife cradles a pet ferret in what you assume was meant to be a seductive pose. Arnulf mutters something about pigment ratios and dunks a brush in lapis lazuli. Blue for holiness, and also for showing off, he grumbles. He starts on your likeness. Historical fact. Medieval portraiture often emphasized stylized beauty. Unnaturally long fingers, widened eyes, smoothed foreheads. Painters weren't capturing realism. They were creating idealized, spiritualized forms, sometimes closer to icons than humans. As he works, Arnulf talks about commissions. Most ladies want their brows higher, their waists smaller, their hairlines somewhere near the back of the head. They want to be remembered as beautiful, not accurate. You ask him what beauty even means to him. He thinks, I think it's the light, where it falls, how it lingers on a person. You blink. The sparrow chirps, unimpressed. He pauses to mix a flesh tone. It's part ochre, part eggshell, and a hint of red ochre dust. I could paint you more noble, he offers, or more flattering. You shake your head. He nods once, just once, and continues. Obscure cultural tidbit. In some medieval households, young girls were taught to walk with small, shuffling steps, not just to appear demure, but to ensure portraits didn't have to be redone if they developed calluses or strong calves. It was not sustainable. As the hours pass, the room grows golden with late afternoon light. You drink watered ale and eat a piece of tough cheese from your pack. Arnulf puts down his brush. He turns the panel to show you. You see yourself just as you are. Tired, windswept, a little curious. Not flawless, but human. I'll varnish it tomorrow, he says, already returning to his Madonna. Let it dry a bit first. You thank him. He grunts. You step outside. The air is crisp. Historians still debate whether these portraits were true likenesses or symbolic masks. But centuries later, the eyes still look back. You walk through the village, past the women you've met, the washerwoman grinding her herbs, the baker's daughter practicing her posture, the scribe copying her grandmother's beauty recipes into the margins of a prayer book, and back to the manor, where the fire's been lit and your bed is turned down, and the candle flickers softly on the table beside a bowl of drying rose petals. Final wind down. The world softens. The fire crackles low, casting gold against the old stone walls of your chamber. Somewhere outside, a barn owl calls, as if echoing the hush that settled across the landscape. You lie down beneath a wool blanket that smells faintly of lavender and something older, something like time itself. Your limbs are heavy with history, from palace corridors to riverbanks, from painted scrolls to moonlit abbey cloisters. You've wandered through centuries of trying to belong, trying to be beautiful, trying to be seen. Now you're just here, not as a noble, not as a painter's muse, not even as a traveler, just here, breathing in rhythm with a quieter age. You feel the distant hum of stories told in candlelight, the whisper of combs through hair, the gentle scratch of a quill noting down yet another rosewater recipe. The beauty standards of the past may have been brutal and strange and occasionally beat-based, but under it all were people like you. Soft hands, tired eyes, hopeful hearts, trying day by day to be enough. You close your eyes. Let the weight of your body sink into the mattress. Let the flicker of the candle fade into your dreams. And let the stillness carry you, at last, to sleep. Good night.